The next generation of young people in our community often surprises us. They're attached to their phones, they tweet, they text, they amaze us with their knowledge of technology. But in today's changing world, it's the challenges that may be even more surprising. Cyberbullying is endangering their self-worth. Access to drugs and alcohol is increasing, while issues like pregnancy, abuse, even homelessness remain. I'm Jim Kircher of the 9 Network, and as part of our commitment to our youth, we've created Youth at Risk, an initiative to help our community find solutions to issues that affect the mental health and well-being of young people in our region. Tonight, we will talk to the experts and the kids themselves. We'll also hear from parents and community members. Welcome to Youth at Risk, a town hall meeting.
Youth at Risk is a 9 Network initiative in partnership with the St. Louis County Children's Service Fund, with funding from the Brown Sisters Foundation and the Mary Rankin Jordan and Eddie A. Jordan Charitable Foundation.
Tonight we have come together to better understand the pressures and the challenges that young people are facing every day and to connect you to people, programs, and resources that can help. If you would like to get some advice or help, or you want to get involved, call the Youth Connection Helpline at 1-877-928-2929. Or for those young people in the 314 and 636 area codes who prefer texting, text 4HLP to 31658. There are health professionals standing by 24 hours a day to take your messages and calls. If you call during this broadcast and you get a busy signal, please call back. We'll repeat the contact information throughout the program. We're also tweeting tonight. You can join the studio conversation by searching for the Help for Youth hashtag on Twitter. Tonight's show is also being streamed live on Facebook. Joining us tonight on our panel is Tom Gaither-Ganem. He's a counselor who is stationed at Kirkwood High School as part of the Educational Support Counselor Program. That's a partnership between that district and BJC Behavioral Health. It is providing support and early intervention for the mental health needs of students. CJ Strom is a counselor at Bridges to Success. It's a program that offers support and rehabilitation to adolescents who are struggling with substance abuse. And Rhonda Gray is the executive director of Almost Home, a shelter and transitional housing program for homeless and abused teenage mothers and their children. During this hour, we'll be talking with our panelists as well as our in-studio audience about the reality of the tough issues facing our youth today, and also the resources and solutions that are available to support them. But first, to better understand these issues and the challenges, we went straight to the source. Anne-Marie Berger recently invited 9 young men and women to our studios to talk about, from their perspectives, the pressures and stresses that are out there and how they are coping with it.
Sit down. This is my dinner.
What are things that worry you or pressures that you might have? What are things that stress you all out?
Getting good grades. Maybe the stress load I put on myself. Like, I take a lot of AP courses and I do a lot of stuff after school. So sometimes I have those days where I'm just kind of overwhelmed because I want to do really well in everything.
You worry about your social life and how you look walking up and down the street, how others view you. It's a lot about self-image.
Sex is another big topic, pressure. Bullying is another.
Bullying isn't always physical. A lot of the times it's verbal, it's mental, and even small things that you may say really has a chance of hurting someone. Even certain glances that you give to someone when you walk down the hallway, that's not the best. I mean, that's bullying itself right there. You're deteriorating how they feel about themselves.
Between probably 7th grade and sophomore year, all anyone really cares about is fitting into a certain group, and kids seem to enjoy picking out some kind of difference that you may have, and they focus in on that, and they tell you that you're wrong or you're not cool or whatever just because of that one thing.
Soraya said in her school they watched movies that were probably made back in the 80s or the 90s about what to do when somebody pushes you in your locker, but they can't tell you what to do when somebody makes a Facebook rumor about you.
What are some of the things they turn to? Are alcohol and drugs very popular in school? Is it prevalent? Is it everywhere?
It's been a long-standing issue it's just another way to escape.
How easy is it to get? Drugs, alcohol, all the above?
By my old school, there was a building that was right across the street, and I knew of friends that would go to that building and purchase alcohol and drugs. And
whenever, any time of the day or night?
Pretty much.
Do you think adults, parents, teachers, do you think they get it? Do you think they have any idea how much is out there?
I think there's some point when you go from being a teenager to an adult where you kind of forget what it's like to be in that position. And then now things have gotten worse with the internet and it being such a strong influence on our lives. They don't understand that those pressures, it got multiplied with all this social media.
I mean, you can access so many more things. You can get drugs so much easier, you know, just find some shady kid on Facebook, whatever.
Parents also, they'll just say, oh, their friends are the source. So, you know, I just gotta make sure they have good friends. I just gotta make sure they have good friends, and they'll put so much importance on that. When really, you just gotta make sure that your own child is in the right mindset. Because what if I do have good friends, and then, you know, me and my good friends one day, we happen to meet, you know, this bad friend. You know, I mean, since drugs are so prevalent, all teenagers, whether they like it or not, have, you know, seen it. You know, have been in the vicinity or, you know, been in the vicinity of someone who's been under the influence of drugs. So it is all around you. You just have to focus on your own child to see, you know, if they know to not
arm them
partake.
with those defenses.
Exactly.
We're going to hear more from some of these kids throughout the evening, but before we hear from them again, I want to talk to the panelists really very briefly. We've got a lot of ground to cover, but Rhonda, you deal primarily with homeless issues, pregnant teens, young moms, right? I see you shaking your head as we're listening to these kids. I'm just wondering from the experts, the three of you, what surprises people generally in the sorts of issues that you find kids dealing with? Or maybe what surprised you when you first started dealing with these issues?
Well, what surprised me was how great the need was. At Almost Home, we serve teenage mothers and their children, and these young mothers typically don't have a safe place to go. They don't have support. They are dealing with a number of the issues that we've been discussing today, and so you would think that somebody facing all of those issues, it would be a sort of small minority of young women, but we get calls every single day. I know last year we had almost 300 inquiries, and we only can serve 15 young women at a time. So I think what was most surprising to me was just how great the need is in terms of the support services the kids need.
Yeah, and a lot of these issues I know are interrelated. We can't really break these up into 3 segments tonight because a lot of the things you're seeing, CJ, you're probably dealing with as well, and you're dealing with primarily with drug, alcohol addiction, I guess. Again, from sort of the outsider, the parent, maybe the uninformed, you know, you watch the news, you read some papers, but what's really going on out there that might surprise us or that we should know about?
Well, I think, Jim, one of the things that's different today than from past years is the fact that we see a large percentage of opiate as well as heroin abuse and dependency at much younger ages today. In fact, in the region, last year there was about 300 deaths from heroin overdose. And today that's much different than what we had looked at 10 years ago. That's very surprising. And I will probably echo what Rhonda said, is the fact that the need is so great in the community, the amount of people that just don't have the information today to be able to seek out the treatment, assess that there's a problem or identify that there's a problem. I think a lot of folks understand that there's a problem, but they just don't know exactly what it is. And today it's really nice because they can access a lot of different services to be able to get those answers that they seek.
I think sometimes maybe the surprising thing is how many services might be out there, and I know it varies from place to place, county to county, and things like that, but there are services there, and I think that people a lot of times figure they need to deal with this on their own. And again, I think one of the messages we want to get across, I think, in this is reducing that idea that you have to deal with it on your own and that you can't talk about it, so that's why we're all here talking about it. Tom, you see students every day. You're working with students. You know, how different is it? I mean, you know, there were people were drinking beer when I was in high school. They were smoking dope when I was in college. What's the big deal? You know, I mean, what's the difference now? Is it different, or we just have better programs dealing with it?
Well, they're definitely still doing it. And I think what's different today is that stress levels have risen, and I think largely because of social media. There's just a constant bombardment in keeping up appearances. Your status is everything, I think, to a teenager and to a preteen. And one of the things that I think is surprising that we may not recognize in terms of our communication with kids is that they desperately want adults' approval, parents' approval. We don't think that sometimes because they kind of, you know, shoo us away. But that's something that is vitally important, and I think the better that we can keep an open line of communication and be sensitive to their needs, it will definitely help us out in terms of reducing the stigma such that they might come forward and talk to us when there is a problem.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from our students here in a moment, but is it really the social media? Is that, you know, I was thinking about this, there was a time when people didn't have telephones and they had to figure out how to use telephones and and it sounds like, well, of course you had to, you know, everybody can use a telephone, but they had to figure that out. Is it more serious than that? I mean, is this just something that is, you know, in the next generation that's not an issue? Or is this always going to be with us? I'm asking you to predict the future, easy thing.
I would absolutely say this. I mean, I'm 41 years old and I have a BlackBerry and I can't make it work. I have an 11-year-old niece who has the ability that she can operate handheld devices at any time she needs. So I would say it's something that we're going to be dealing with going forward from now on. It seems that I'm the one that is behind, whereas the adolescents or youth today are far advanced to what I'm capable of doing.
Yeah. Let's hear from some of our young people here, because I know when the folks were talking, a lot of it was social media, the issue of cyberbullying, of anonymous comments, those sorts of things. Is that really that big of a deal?
My name is Maxine Dumaine. I'm a student at Metro High School, and I agree. It is definitely a big deal. There's also there's going to be a lot of cyberbullying on social media websites and stuff like that. But I think maybe we could solve that problem by educating the main users of social media. I think if I know teachers and psychologists, they get crash courses in, cyberbullying and how to prevent suicides and, how to talk people down from a dark place. And I don't think the main people that are on social media websites, like, the peers, the classmates, people like that, they don't get that. And so I see a Facebook status about, suicidal tendencies almost like every other time I get on Facebook. But I'm not, I'm not necessarily educated in how to prevent that. It's always, oh, we have to wait till the teachers find out or somebody tells the teachers. I think if we're directly taught how to do that, maybe like freshmen coming into high school get a crash course on it, then I think we can really start preventing that.
Interesting. Tom, your take on that?
I think that's a fantastic idea, absolutely. I mean, because you all, this is part of our evolution. It's part of our psychosocial evolution, technology. And you all have grown up with it, and so you know how to manipulate it, you know how to work with it, and you know what matters to you. And so, absolutely, the more we can empower you all through the expertise of the professionals dealing with these issues to manage social media, I think that would be extraordinary.
I'd like to hear Tina Myers in the audience. We'll get a microphone to her in a moment. But how much of catching up are we doing on these things? And Rhonda, maybe even in your situation, when you started dealing with homeless youth, I mean, how even... and I don't know if there's a socioeconomic breakdown in the folks you're dealing with, but is social media an issue for them as well?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think if you say, do we have catching up to do, I certainly do. In terms of, I think technology is a tool, and it's one that our young people have gravitated to and grown up with in the way that adults haven't, and so they know how to use and even exploit it more than we do. But what I would say is there are still some other issues at hand. I mean, because social media is just a tool, in the same way that the telephone is, there's still a consciousness behind that. If like the young lady said, if we don't educate our young people, we don't empower them, if we don't give them that sense of affirmation and self-worth so that they can go on Facebook and say something positive as quickly as they can say something negative. And it's, to my knowledge, none of my girls got pregnant over Facebook. so I'm not going to be one of those people. We're always looking for that scapegoat. In my generation, it was the media. Now it's the social media. But the fact of the matter is, people have to make choices and decisions. Parents have to be there for their kids in a way that is very different, maybe, than when we were growing up. And until we start dealing with those real issues, we can always point the finger and say, well, this is the real problem. That's not why kids are homeless. It's not because of Facebook.
Right. We knew we would get into the cyberbullying issue, and we asked Tina Meyer to join us tonight. You probably remember her daughter committed suicide, Megan, after a cyberbullying incident, got a lot of national coverage. Big issue. And since then, Tina, you've been working in this area. Clearly, there was an education in your own tragic circumstances in finding out what was going on. But what are you now finding out from folks as you really travel the country and deal with this?
You know, I think the biggest issue that we have is the disconnect between adults and kids. That is the biggest thing I see. Many times we as adults and educators and parents, a lot of times we try to tell kids what to do. And so when we're talking about social media is not the problem. I do have some parents who will say, you know, just get rid of Facebook. Can't we just close all of that stuff down? That's not going to change it. You know, we have children who are under a year old that can operate iPads. They know how to play the games. And so this is going to continue. We as adults have to start getting on board. And I think the biggest thing is training and getting our kids. We talked to them about stranger danger when they were younger. We have to teach them the same skills now about online, and I think the biggest thing is for us as adults to validate teens' feelings, not just tell them what we think it is or tell them don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. Validate their feelings. Understand what technology they are using, because again, we can't keep shunning it away. We have to start understanding. If they have children that are on Facebook and social media, we need to understand what those are in order to be able to give them to our children. And so it's an amazing feature to have, but it's just really us as adults. We're the ones making many of the mistakes, and we need to start getting on board. The teens, you know, like you had stated, if we give them the power, they have the most amazing ideas. It's empowering the youth to help us as adults start understanding how their behavior is and what we can do to help them.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks
for coming. For you guys, for all of you and the things that you're dealing with, you're dealing with both children and adults, I imagine. There's education going on from both ends on this. If it's social media, it's what are, you know, the guidelines for young people. And your program, Tom, in Kirkwood, isn't just in the high school.
That's right.
So this idea, at least that Kirkwood's bought into, and other districts as well, I'm sure, is that this really needs to start early on.
Absolutely. Oh gosh, the earlier the better. And it's about communication. It's about kids feeling comfortable talking to their parents, feeling comfortable within their own skins. And I think so much of that centers around self-esteem, self-confidence. And you know, there's the old saying that you can't be your kid's friend. And I disagree with that. I think you absolutely can be your kid's friend. I think that needs to be balanced, of course, with being their parent. It doesn't abdicate your role as parent just to be their friend. But having that kind of a healthy relationship where there's open communication, where you can have fun together, it helps kids relax and feel like they're not going to get screamed at, they're not going to get yelled at, they're not going to get shamed into basically seclusion, which is what happens sometimes, which increases the stigma and which is what intensifies, I think, their alienation.
Want to hear from one of our young people? You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Soraya Kalu. I'm a student at Jennings Senior High School. For me, I don't believe everything should be on social media, because if used the right way, Facebook is a wonderful way to connect with people in Italy while I'm here in the United States. I get to meet somebody across seas. But for me, I feel that most adults have this idea, do as I say, not what I do. And then they tell you, oh, don't worry about what people say, just be you. If you're yourself, then everything will be okay. As they put on their suit to go to a business office, because that's what's professional at a business office. So it's kind of confusing for us, because you tell us, just be yourself, just wear what you want, do what you want, and then you see your parent also has to conform and do what society says is right.
It's really not easy. There's no easy answer, so that, we're not going to solve it. But I appreciate your input on this. We're going to listen to another. We're going to move along because we've got a lot of pretty serious issues to cover. Now, if you would like to find some help, if you would like to find a program or some people who are dealing with these issues, or if you'd like to get involved by learning more or volunteering, call the Youth Connection helpline at 1-877-928-2929. You can call for yourself or a family member. Young people in the 314 and 636 area codes, you can text 4HLP to 31658. There are operators standing by 24 hours a day. Now, as we heard earlier, alcohol and drugs are just about everywhere, easily gotten a hold of regardless of age, race, socioeconomic background. Here's the story of one young man who is fighting to break his addiction.
I'm Zach. I am 18 years old. Come on. Want to drop? Hey. My life is pretty, I don't know, I would consider pretty normal as a kid. 2 brothers, mom and a dad.
Sometimes I think that I'd like to be reincarnated as my kids. I think they have a good life. I emailed Carlos about going fishing.
The hotel's right on the beach, right?
Yeah, so I'm thinking this weekend.
We all, more or less got along. Nothing that would really be like, wow, like no wonder he became a drug addict,
Zach, the oldest of his brothers, was in the 8th grade, just 13 years old, when he smoked marijuana for the first time. It was infrequent at first, but it didn't take long before his use was out of his control.
Freshman year came around, pot got more available and whatnot, so I started buying weed from kids at school, started smoking weed every day. I was just kind of rolling with it. I wasn't thinking like how this would affect me in the future. I was like, well, this is fun, so might as well do it as often as possible because it makes me feel good.
His parents, like many, were in uncharted territory, and without knowing exactly how often Zach was using, it was difficult for them to understand how severe the problem had become.
As any parent, if you see a child doing something abnormal and it starts slowly, you're distressed. And it comes in little shock waves of abnormal behavior. And you're thinking that, well, this is just maybe a phase he has to go through or something he has to work through. And of course you've got a counselor involved and that he could meet with on a weekly basis. And it made us feel better because we were talking about it.
As high school progressed, so did Zach's drug abuse. He had passed the point where simply talking about it would help. In addition to smoking weed every day, he began popping pills, using LSD, and soon alcohol was his substance of choice.
I would steal like $20 every few days from my parents, and I would just go to school and buy pills from this kid who sells them at school. So I would be high at school on pills, and then when I would get home, I would get drunk. And that was basically my daily routine for quite a while there.
He isolated so badly. He was so sick. It's like having somebody who has a really, who's dying of cancer or something. He was just going into the shadows.
That's the horrendous thing of addiction, is that you see your child that you remember go away. And you see this ugly addiction take over and sort of rule your life, and you see very few glimpses of that beautiful child that you remember.
Zach was skipping classes, his grades were dropping, and his friendships were diminishing. At 18, because of addiction, Zach's future was in question. He entered and struggled through a series of rehab programs, and staying clean and sober is something he works at every day.
Because when you're in rehab, it's like, oh, I just want to go home. Like, it'd be so great if I could just go home. Like, everything would be awesome. But then you get home and it's like, well, I mean, I have to stay sober while I'm here, and that's hard. And I'd rather be in college, and I'd rather be doing all this other stuff that, in essence, like, I messed up for myself, and I got to remember that.
CJ, you must be dealing with these sorts of things, I mean, across the spectrum, but it's got to be more common than we know, because in part because people don't talk about it.
Absolutely. I think that was a really great piece, and some of the parts in there that I really liked was the fact that it talked about it from a family systemic disease portion. The entire family is affected by substance abuse and chemical dependency. What was also moving within that piece was the fact that this family struggled with it silently until they reached out to get some help from some other folks and professionals that were able to provide them with the kind of services that they needed to begin the healing process as it relates to substance abuse and chemical dependency. What's interesting about this particular video is the fact that this family is a good example that chemical dependency doesn't pay attention to socioeconomic, demographics, population, color, age. The reality of chemical dependency is that it can impact anyone, and I would say substance abuse, as you were saying, is very prevalent in our community as it relates to adolescents.
I mean, it must have been difficult at first for this family to step out and ask for help, but this is not easily resolved. He's going to be dealing with this for a long, long time.
Absolutely, and from the addict's perspective, I also really appreciated the portion that he talked about when he was in treatment, how great it would be to just get home. Let's just get home and it'll all be okay. Not accurate. And I think what's interesting about this individual is how he talked about going forward day to day, learning how to stay sober, change his life, change his thinking, and it is an ongoing, lifelong process for most.
Got a comment from the audience right here. Want to introduce yourself?
My name is Dakota Homus. I'm a junior at St. Charles High School. And I think that as easy as it would be to blame this on the adults, I think that part of the solution is in positive peer pressure. At school, I often hear about people drinking or smoking, but I never hear people saying you should stop doing that. And it's not that their friends don't care, they do care, but they're afraid to say something, and I think that needs to be changed.
Tom, how do you see that in the situations that you've been in?
Oh, I think you're exactly right. I think that peer pressure has a lot to do with the choices that kids make. And kind of the old understanding of peer pressure is like, come on, everybody's doing it. And I don't think it comes in that form. I think it's more because people are doing it, there is a compulsion to do it, to be part of the group, to participate. And then not to do it puts you outside of the herd, and that, that's tough, especially if you're struggling with some confidence, self-esteem issues when you so desperately want to belong.
Another comment in the audience, or we'll get there in a moment. We want to hear from the police officer, I think, St. Louis County, but CJ, again, availability. There was a time, and I think for a lot of parents, again, they're comparing it to their own youth, especially baby boomers. You could find drugs if you sought it out. I'm beginning to think that maybe you don't have to seek it out now.
I would completely agree with that. I think that 20, 30 years ago, if you wanted to get drugs or alcohol, you could go to your local arcade perhaps, and you'd be able to get it at that location. The interesting part about that piece was the fact that he mentioned multiple times going to school and buying drugs from the person at school. Availability is increasing, potency of drugs is increasing. Marijuana, which used to be 4 and 5% THC, is now looking at 20, 22, 23% THC. The heroin potency has increased dynamically in the past 10 years. What used to be 12, 13, 14% is between 40 and 80% dependent. So availability is increasing, and potency is as well.
I mean, there's a certain percentage that, you figure, I don't know what the percentage is, but of a group of people who try a drug at a party, recreationally, there's a certain percentage of people who are going to have a problem with that. So if you expand the availability, you're expanding the number of people who are going to have problems with it.
Absolutely.
That's my simple math in this. Let me go to the police officer. You want to introduce yourself and tell us your perspective on all of this?
Yes, sir. My name is Sergeant Mark Whitson. I'm with the St. Louis County Police, and I'm assigned to Bureau of Drug Enforcement. And I agree with the potency level. The heroin problem right now in the state of Missouri, or actually the entire country, is huge. And it's kind of just now starting to be made aware of by people. In St. Louis County in 2010, we had 60 overdose heroin deaths. We had 91 last year. This area, St. Charles County, Franklin County, Jefferson County, St. Louis County, St. Louis City, we're responsible for about 90% of the heroin deaths in the entire state. The potency level is increased so much. Back in the day when I was assigned to DEA, it was 14%. Now we're getting as high as 80 and 90% sometimes. And it's very addictive, and I can't speak on the psychological part or the physiological part of it, but I'm not an expert on that, but it does ruin lives. It's not a victimless crime because the families, they're affected by this. It really just tears them apart. And there's also co-occurring things with mental illness, I believe, too, that's involved in this.
In the homelessness issue and the girls you're dealing with, are drugs an issue, Rhonda? Or is that just, is it part of it? I don't know, necessarily a cause and effect like social media, but how big of an issue is it for the kids you're dealing with?
Oh, I think it's a huge issue because oftentimes young people use drugs as an escape, as a way of coping, and so our girls face tremendous stressors, of which pregnancy just happens to be one. And we do drug testing when the girls enter our facility, and we have a number of girls who come in who show drugs in their system. We give them an opportunity to go through treatment, outpatient treatment. Several of them have been in treatment the entire time they've been at our facility. Many of them will come in and say, you know, when we're testing them, I already know I'm going to test positive because I can't stop doing X. And I would even count cigarettes in that. We have a serious problem. And when you're talking about young women who are pregnant, not being able to even stop smoking cigarettes and smoking marijuana is a huge, huge problem. But we just address it by putting it, you know, dealing with the issues with all the other issues that they are faced with when they come to the facility. We try to give them the resources and the support.
Yeah, in the homelessness question as well, I mean, you're dealing actually, I guess, with a couple of things. You have kids who are dealing with these problems, but you also have kids who are coming from homes where they're having these problems. So their mental health issues may not be directly affected to what they're doing, but to what other people are doing in their homes.
Absolutely.
Dale, you've got a comment in the audience? Want to introduce yourself to us, please?
Yes, good evening. My name is Lamont Calor. I'm with St. Louis County Government, County Youth Programs. I think what we also notice in St. Louis County is the lack of resources and the availability of those resources to a lot of the youth that we serve each and every day. And we're noticing that youth are more or less crossing lines, whereas before, I think someone mentioned earlier how you can go across the street from a school and be able to purchase drugs. Now you see youth from all different demographic areas coming into low socioeconomic areas and being able to get those drugs.
That's the availability. So when you say resources, were you talking about resources that can help kids or resources in the sense of the money to buy drugs or the availability of drugs?
Well, resources that are there to help kids.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the questions here. I mean, we're putting up a number and we're telling people to call. One of the points here is, I think, to some extent, there are programs that may be underutilized, that people may not be aware of that. That doesn't mean that they will find it immediately or in their area, but I think there's a pretty good chance that if you look, if you make the call on the number or you do the text, there's a good chance in a lot of areas, especially St. Louis County, I think, where you'll find something available. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely. I think in St. Louis County, what's so nice about what's going on right now is the Children's Service Fund has an awful lot of programs that they fund that offer programming for all different sorts of issues at no further cost to the families of St. Louis County. So essentially there's a lot of dollars out there that are available for treatment, and people just need to access that treatment is all it is. Essentially raising up their hand, asking for help, and help will become available.
Okay. Let's go to the audience.
Hi. My name is Kate Tanzi. I'm the Executive Director of the St. Louis County Children's Service Fund, and I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate what Dakota had to say in terms of really holding your own generation accountable and really pushing back on one another and saying, hey, you know, being sober is cool. And we need a lot more voices. You know, again, we've been out doing a lot of education about drugs and alcohol and the problems in the community. And parents are starving to hear, what do I say to my kids? How do I talk to them? How young do I start? the information that we really need to get to our community is just paramount, and it starts at every end. So everything that we do with, even just pushing back on your own generation or really holding my generation accountable in terms of parents is really the way to go. So I just wanted to say more. I'm so pleased that we're having the conversation. Thank you.
I wonder, we talk about the parents and the parents' role, and we hear two things: parents who are not involved, and we have helicopter parents, right? And they're too involved, and they're in the way, and all of that. It's a tough call. I mean, there's no easy answer to this as a parent. I mean, every family's different. Every family comes with a different background. I won't say family values, but the way they express those values are going to be different. And you have to deal with that, I would guess, on a case-by-case basis, because advice for one family may not hold up well for another family. So how do you deal with that? I mean, is it, you deal with that with students, and you've got a diverse student population.
Right. Well, I bring families in as often as I can. I think having that open dialogue with families, family counseling, referring to family counseling is extraordinarily important, because the way in which we communicate can either be a deal breaker or a problem solver.
How difficult is it? Again, I think the big case here is reducing that stigma, and it's all, you can talk about neighborhoods that have a higher crime rate and a lower crime rate. But when you come to some of these mental health issues, especially with the drugs, you can't break it down that way. And yet, I'm not sure if, people may feel they're living in a safe place and they're doing all the right things. The family in the story. Good, stable family, at least what they say.
Absolutely, and I think what we find is that a lot of times when an adolescent comes into one of our programs, they feel like they're doing what it is they want to be doing with their lives. They feel that they're happy with it, and the only pain that they're experiencing are consequences that are put upon them by other folks. What's interesting, someone mentioned earlier about the communication value, and I think what's so important about that is that parents and kids don't generally communicate about drug and alcohol use, abuse, or dependence. And in our programs, what we're able to do is educate those parents as to what's going on, provide services to them, and we do that in a way that it really helps the communication between the client and their parent.
You get resistance?
We get resistance sometimes. I think that one of the things that's really helped us in that resistance is the fact that when we talk to parents and we say, listen, if you participate in the treatment with your child, his chances of success are increased by 50%. Now, I would like to sit here and tell you that that's enough and all the time the parents come to our program. That's actually not true. But we do see a lot of parents that come and participate with our program knowing that information. And I think the reality of it is being a family problem, there's a family solution to that problem. So we do have family therapy, we do have parent education. I think the quickest way I could explain it is if there's the four of us on the stage and you get hit in the face with a pie, we also get that whipped cream on us. So to clean you up and not clean us up leaves us in the situation that a lot of families are when that person goes off for treatment.
Let's go to the audience. You got a comment? Introduce yourself.
My name is Kelsey Washam, and I work at Touchpoint Autism Services. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and so what I see with kids that are my siblings' age, something is the reason they get started, smoking marijuana is depression, and they see that it's more of, it's easier instead of going to your parents and saying that the way that you're feeling. Smoking, pot is quicker. It gives you a quicker reaction than trying to get started on meds. Meds can take a long time to get into your system. You have to go through a lot of different meds. So I just didn't know if that was something common that you guys are seeing as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, self-medication, right?
Absolutely, and I think another thing that we see that's really very common in our clients is about 8 out of 10 of them show comorbidity. So that when a client comes in, it's very important to be able to get stabilization for that issue, whatever that comorbidity is. But we sure do see a lot of kids that, and numbers as high as 80%, it's obvious that kids are trying to medicate themselves at some level to try and address some of the problems that they can't on their own.
Yeah. Let's hear from the audience. Kendra is from Youth in Need. You want to, tell us what your organization does, Kendra, and your input here.
Hi, I'm Kendra Elliott. I'm the Street Outreach Manager for Youth in Need. So we primarily serve homeless youth and adolescents on the street level. And so we work with a lot of different agencies that are represented here and that you can access through the Youth Connection helpline. And we definitely see similar things. We see a lot of youth that are in a homelessness situation that are fending for themselves and bouncing place to place sometimes, and use substances as a way to cope with their situation. And so not having to worry about feeling hungry or not having a place to stay and just the trauma that they might have been through, it's easier to self-medicate in some way.
Yeah. Rhonda, tell me a little bit too about this idea of homelessness and what we're really talking about. And Kendra, you can maybe stick with us as well. We see people, if you go downtown, you see people sleeping in the park, and we generally consider them homeless people. Is that what we're talking about, or is there a broader definition of homeless?
Definitely a broader definition, and we work a lot with Youth in Need and Kendra's agency and get referrals. And I think part of the problem with youth homelessness is they are not the traditional homeless. They are oftentimes not on the riverfront or in Keener Plaza, and you're not going to typically find them, although sometimes you will, sleeping under bridges and things like that. But they are very much under the radar because they're moving from house to house to house, or they're living in uninhabitable, unsafe conditions that we wouldn't call a home. And so they live like that in silence and without any support or any help, and they do start self-medicating and using drugs to try to mask the pain that they're dealing with. But I think we need to relook at particularly youth homelessness, because we all have a perception of what the homeless person looks like. You pull up to the stop sign or the red light and you see somebody holding a sign. That's your idea of homeless. And none of our girls who come to us have typically been in that situation, but they were so under the radar in terms of just not having a place to go for sometimes years.
Kendra, how do you find them? Do they come to you? Do you go out and searching for them?
So through a combination of methods. So street level outreach, when we're working with young people, is very different than with the adult homeless population, because as Rhonda said, often those youth are trying to blend in with the rest of the youth population. They don't want to stand out to the police and other authorities. So we're educating all youth on what services might be available. If you get in a crisis, where can you turn to? What are services that are out there for you? So in addition to street level outreach and giving out information, we do presentations in schools and other community groups just to let youth know that this is an issue, along with a lot of other issues and potential crisis situations you could be in and how you can access help if you need it.
Great. And Dale, we want to talk to Bart in just a moment, but let's hear from one of our young folks here.
Hi, I'm Judy. I also attend Metro. I'm a student. I think it is really important to involve family in a student or a young person's treatment, but I also think it's really important to have resources to young people to tell them that they can actually access these resources without their parents or their family, because sometimes they're going to be really, really scared. Like, they're not going to think that there's any resources for them to access without their parents, because maybe they're not of age, or they can't get there, they can't drive there, et cetera, so they're never going to be able to access that. And I know that whenever I think of something that I need to do, I have to think of, well, I'm not 18, do I need my parent to sign for this, et cetera. So I think that there should be a better way to have them maybe get a little bit of help first and a little more stable, and then try to bring parents and family in, guardians, slowly, instead of just kind of rushing and saying, well, you have to have your parents, your family, whatever, to proceed with the process.
Yeah, what's the reality of that? Are there any legal problems with that? I mean, can you deal with folks directly, or?
Well, in my program we can, which is the nice thing, because so students can come to us at our educational support counselor program within the district, talk to us first, and then we can help them sort out the issues that they need to deal with. But eventually, indeed, we want to be able to bring families in. I know that many agencies are hamstrung, indeed, by the under 18 laws. And so that's just kind of a tough reality.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point you bring up, though, because there may be situations where the young person is more willing to find the help, and the parents might be resistant to that.
We see that a lot. In fact, we're trying now to overcome those challenges by revisiting, looking at the qualified minor laws, and because we oftentimes will have girls who contact us and say, I need help. And they realize that they are in an unsafe situation, but if they're under 18 and the parents won't sign, we will spend, because we would prefer that if they can get the parental support or some sort of family support, it's going to increase their likelihood of success just in the work you do. But sometimes that's just not the case. We get parents who are completely resistant and won't sign their daughters in, and now we're having to address that.
So we've been asking people to make calls if they want. So let's find out a little bit about what might happen. What would we expect if somebody is thinking, I want to call? Bart, tell me what your organization does and what people might expect if they make that call or send that message.
Sure. My name is Dr. Bart Andrews. I'm the Director of Clinical Services at BHR. BHR runs the Youth Connection Helpline, which is a 24/7 helpline that is available to folks by phone or by text, and it's staffed by master's level mental health professionals around the clock. We work really closely with all of the agencies in this room. We work particularly closely with Youth in Need, so that there's a one-stop point for youth who have mental health crises, substance abuse crises, or housing crises. We can bring a lot of resources to bear very quickly. One of the things that we've been hearing a lot as people are talking about is that the barriers that our youth face to the stressors in our community have been reduced over the years. In fact, youth are exposed to much more stress much earlier. One of the things that the Youth Connection Helpline is striving to do is reduce as many barriers as possible to youth and families reaching out to getting help. So we've made that easier by providing 24/7 access via phone and via texting. Folks can call in, we'll handle the call, we'll find out what's going on and start getting you pointed to some of these resources that are out there. One of the youth was talking about parental involvement. And in Missouri, that is a really big problem because this is a very strong parental rights state. However, you can call into the hotline, you can talk to a mental health professional and get that process rolling and start looking at what your options are and start building some trust. I think a lot of the barriers that youth face is they're afraid to talk to their parents because they're afraid what might happen. In fact, the Youth Connection Helpline frequently is involved in talking to the parents with the youth and being the kind of the bridge. And often you find that when there's somebody there to support them, their parents' reaction, instead of being angry or upset, is very concerned and helpful, and we start reducing some of those barriers. So that's kind of how the helpline works.
Great, thank you. And that's the number we've been putting up throughout the evening. So really, I encourage you to call it if you need anything. You need to talk to someone if you know you've got a particular problem and a resource you're looking for, or just you want to talk. A comment from the audience. Introduce yourself to us.
I'm Marilyn Bader from the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, and we work with a lot of prevention programs. And I, too, would like to echo what Kate had to say about Dakota in terms of the positive peer pressure. And there are so many young people out there that are making the right decisions that sometimes we call them the silent majority. And there are prevention programs that are working for young people, and we see a lot of examples of young people here that have made a lot of right decisions. So I guess my question is twofold. To the young people, what worked for you so that you're not in some of the situations that we are hearing that other young people find themselves in? And perhaps from the professionals, what in your opinion has been working in terms of your prevention so that you reduce the recidivism rate for young people coming back to some of those issues? So prevention twofold.
Okay, let's hear from the professionals first. Response to that?
You know, I think that good, ethical, evidence-based moral treatment provides an opportunity to give people an effective, safe place to make some changes. Now, of course, that's in a treatment center. The impact that they have outside of that treatment center is that silent majority that you talk about. I think what's really nice is that when an adolescent gets to know who they are and they start making some decisions in their lives, who they are, they can start making their voice known. I think a lot of the kids who come to us, they don't have their own voice. They have the voice that their friends have, that social media has for them, that music has for them, so they really don't have their own voice. So in getting them to uncover some layers of the onion, I think what's really nice is that they do have that when they leave treatment and impact people in a very positive way, because we know that substance abuse and chemical dependency leads to pretty negative interaction between people. And I think with the positive side of that is that positive reinforcement is something that we really work towards within our treatment programs, because inevitably they're going to leave and they're going to go back to their lives. And it's something that I think that's really important, actually.
Okay. And then let's hear, we're also asking for a response from the young people. So, there we are.
Hi, my name is Halo. I'm a senior at Clayton High School. I just wanted to say that I feel like you were saying how back in the day, students were being peer pressured by other students to do drugs. I feel like nowadays, students who want to do drugs are seeking that out because they have those capabilities now. It's much more available. So it's really up to the student whether or not they are going to use drugs. They're making the choice. They're, making the choice to substitute drugs for some other experience that they could be having instead. And I think that it's up to the adults, it's up to the parents, the people who we look up to tell us what choices we need to make in order to have those experiences that are really enriching and will really put us forward, give us a future. Mm-hmm. I struggled with drug addiction before I moved here, and I can't even explain fully how helpful it has been for me to have my dad tell me, to have him help me realize what I was missing. I realized that I had given up my future, essentially. If I had stayed on the same track, I would not be in this wonderful position that I'm in today, where I have a great future ahead of me. I have confidence that I'm going to end up in where I want to be, where I've always wanted to be with my life.
What really made the difference for you? Was there a turning point, or was it a gradual, I'll say maturation, but maybe it's a gradual discovery?
I just got to a low point. I got a few really bad grade reports, and I started thinking about college and how I was planning on getting into college with grades like that. And I realized that I wouldn't. And I felt uninspired and, like I didn't know exactly what was keeping me going where I was or why I was doing what I was doing.
I would think, it would seem to me that there would be a sense of finding in those kids that sense of personal responsibility or the strength that they have in each one, and it probably takes some time to do that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Rhonda.
I really like what Halo just said, because one of the things, I remember I've worked in the field for many, many years, and when I was working in teen pregnancy prevention, one of the things that came up, I would hear Marian Wright Edelman said, a bright future is the best contraceptive. And I still believe that a bright future and an inspired youth is going to be the best deterrent to at-risk behavior of any kind. And so having her echo those sentiments of having something to look forward to, having an experience to replace that negative experience of substance abuse is really critical. And I think we have a responsibility to ensure that youth are getting that.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up, and it sounds like you were wrapping it up for us a little bit here, but leave us with something, the three of you, from your own experiences, because this is not the end. We're just beginning to really delve into this. But leave us with something tonight, a piece of advice or a thought or something that we can take away from this meeting. Tom?
Well, and just to kind of add on to what Halo was saying, she was talking about her connection with her dad. It's that relationship. Of course, I'm a counselor. I'm going to believe in relationships, the power of relationships to heal. And I think that that's the most important thing we can do, is have that healthy, open, loving, gentle, civil relationship with our kids as much as we possibly can, and to foster that. And that gives us the best chance to succeed.
These sorts of issues, these sorts of problems destroy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to put them back together when you're dealing with this?
Sometimes, absolutely. And but I think that that's where we have to check ourselves, because we might lose sense of the love that we have. Obviously, the love is always there, but sometimes we act out of anger and out of frustration, out of irritation, and that can just separate us more and more.
CJ, a final thought or piece of advice? What do we leave tonight with from your point of view?
I think it's very important to understand that there is a problem, if in fact there is a problem. It doesn't make a family less than, it doesn't make them broke, it doesn't make them irreplaceable or able to get the help that they need. What I would say today is contempt prior to investigation will leave a person in everlasting ignorance. And as far as I can tell, the amount of folks that are seeking services in all of the St. Louis region lets me know that the conversation we are now having is an ongoing conversation that we will continue to have, and more people will seek that help, and I think that that's very powerful.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks everybody here tonight. A lot to be thinking about and a lot to act on, I hope, for those of you who are viewing and those of you in the audience. It's really all the time we have left tonight to tackle such a big issue. I'd like to thank our panelists, Tom Gaither-Gainham, C.J. Strom, Rhonda Gray, as well as those here in our studio for sharing their expertise, their insight, their experiences on this important topic. Again, if you would like to find help or get involved, call the Youth Connection hotline. It's 1-877-928-2929. Or for those young people in the 314 and 636 area codes who prefer texting, text 4HLP to 31658. There are people at those phones 24 hours a day. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Youth at Risk is a 9-network initiative in partnership with the St. Louis County Children's Service Fund, with funding from the Brown Sisters Foundation and the Mary Rankin Jordan and Eddie A. Jordan Charitable Foundation.